welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your email questions and comments, dj@ArtistFirst.com. Here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Zena. We didn't even hear our intro music. It was a very silent beginning. But I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And tonight we are here to continue our heroic journey.
Just being here is a heroic journey, people. Just being here. I'm serious.
Just putting up with me is some sort of heroic journey.
No, that's not what I meant.
Oh. It is, though. It is a heroic journey. And tonight we do have a quote from somebody who's quite familiar with the heroic journey, with the journey of the hero, and that would be the late and really genius Joseph Campbell. And if you are not familiar with his works, he wrote The Power of Myth, and he wrote The Hero's Journey, I believe, and the many Masks of God, and so many scholarly works. And we love Campbell for many reasons, but not least of which is that when our son Christopher was sick, he saw Campbell and he saw The Power of Myth on video. The series where he was interviewed by Bill Moyers, which was really beautiful and still available. You can find it on YouTube. And he was captivated by the myths and the stories and the hero's journey. And he very easily and quickly saw that what he was going through and what his friends were going through in their trials in the cancer ward was in essence a form of a hero's journey. So that was sort of our introduction to Campbell, and it was really a beautiful and a really a fortunate thing to have found at that time, because it helped explain something which was so foreign and so challenging, and relate it to the struggle that we all go through. As you said, this is a hero's journey. We're all on a heroic journey through a dark and forbidding world, which is this world.
Right.
So what tonight? So I'm gonna let you introduce the topic more fully, because this was sort of your find. But I will give Joseph Campbell's quote, and that'll kind of be the beginning of the theme, if you will. And in this case, what we're talking about is the hero, really from the point of view of the trials that a hero has to go through, and the reasons, in essence, that a hero goes through those trials. So the quote is, "A hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than themselves, than oneself." That's Joseph Campbell.
Right.
But you want to introduce the topic that you came up with a little bit more fully, perhaps.
Well, to start with, the reason I said, it is a heroic thing to be down here. It's acknowledging the fact that, first and foremost, this is not heaven. And that thought doesn't always occur to people. Oh, they say, oh, yeah, but they live as if it's supposed to be heaven, and they have to fix everything so that it will be heaven, which is an interesting thing. It doesn't mean that you don't adjust things in your life for the better, but it is the acknowledgement that this place is not perfect, and striving for perfection in an imperfect world is absurd. But,
go ahead.
But it's something that many have striven for. So it's just that simple acknowledgement that we would like to make it right in our own mind. And in doing that, you try to perfect it. So it's acknowledging that the baseline of this place is not perfection.
Yeah, I would even go a step further, if you don't mind. I would say that the purpose of this place is trial, is to learn and to suffer in many ways. I think it's artificially imposed that you try to make it into perfection, but I think the realization that not only are you here not for perfection, but for experience and for incarnation in an imperfect body, in an imperfect world, and then that realization is the beginning of truth, not something that when you're lying, you're covering it all up and trying to make it perfect.
Yes, and when you go back into any of the philosophies or religions, take for instance the Buddhist, all life is suffering. Why is that the first tenet?
It's such a downer. You're like, oh man, you're like totally harshing my mellow. I don't like you. Moving on. Yes, yeah, exactly. Why is that the first tenet?
And it's just a simple acknowledgement that this place is not perfection. Now, you have your experiences of joy and fullness and completion of certain things that you've trying to build or strive for, but it's acknowledging that is not the baseline. It's not the ongoing. We always win. Like I was listening to a 4-year-old the other day, and she's just said to me, "I like to win. I always want to win."
That's honest.
And I sat there like, how is that any different from anybody else?
She's just being upfront about it.
Yeah, she's 4, so she hasn't figured out that you shouldn't really say stuff like that to other people, that you're trying to be first over.
Right. Well, it's refreshingly honest and candid.
Yes.
I like to win. I want to win all the time.
Yes.
That's the other and everything else that people pile on top of that is the lie that they're trying to tell people that I'd like to pay fair. No, you want to win.
Yes, and it's exactly that. It's refreshingly frank. That that's their base nature. This is the base nature of every human being that I know of. We like to win, and we want to win all the time. Like this crazy Powerball thing that was going on. How many people had to participate in that to get over $2 billion? I mean, we want to win, and we want to win all the time.
Yes, well, that's true. I mean, we're kind of going off the track a bit, but that is this place. This place which is basically an imperfect world which we are incarnated in. In Campbell's, The Power of Myth, he gives the hero's journey, and the interesting thing about it, if you look at the circle, which is what he describes, and I won't go into it in great detail, there's a portion of the circle which is both the beginning and the end, which is sort of the hero's origin and his final resting place. This, to us here, would be where we come from spirit. We come from spirit, we come into this place when we go back. But this place, they draw a little bright line where the hero has his origin and her return. Everything below that line is the dark world where you struggle, where there are many trials, and there's a great, huge area where you reach the very bottom of the circle, where everything is lost, the all is lost moment. This journey is part of every myth. every story. This was Campbell's great revelation. And all good stories do that. They all have these particular elements where the hero goes through trials.
Right. Right.
And that's everyone's life. We're all the hero. We had a show years and years ago where we're all the hero of our own life.
Right. Right. Well, acknowledging that this world is not perfect and it has sorrows and suffering is also in the field of time. So this place is the field of time and sorrows and death. It's so cheerful.
You can see where we're going here, don't you? Go ahead.
And the acknowledgement that you cannot eliminate the sorrows of this world. It's just what this place is. The shadow and the light play, chiaroscuro. So this is where Campbell had brought in a quote by St. Augustine about Jesus and the cross. And he came to the cross like a bridegroom to the bride. And you think of that and you're like, okay, he's going to the cross and he's marrying it?
Well, the suffering, right?
Yes.
Which is what it represents.
And if you look at the symbolism, what it means is it's eternity participating voluntarily with the process of time, sorrow, and death. And that blows your mind. You're talking about an eternal being willingly, lovingly participating with this process of time, sorrow, and death. And when you look at it in terms of this is supposed to be the representation of God's compassion for man's state. Man is stuck down here. We're trying to find a way to get out. But everything around us is making us fearful. This world brings up, triggers a lot of fear. So how do you get out of all that?
Well, I would go back and just say that the heroic is the idea though of a willing incarnation, and the portrayal, St. Augustine's portrayal of Christ as being the willing incarnation of the eternal into the temporal, could also be all of us, and in some ways is all of us.
That is his teaching.
That's the teaching. So. The revelation that Campbell came out of that was from Augustine's writings was that this is a willing incarnation and a willing acceptance of the, as you said, this veil of tears, the time, sorrow, death, all the things which are part of this incarnation, regardless of how wonderful and good every moment of it may be. You don't escape these things. All life is suffering really could be stated, all life has within it suffering. There is certainly joy. There is certainly, as you said before, there's certainly fulfillment. And you in Tolle's parlance, when you come into this area of time and space, the experiential, he sees the cross as having an experiential plane, which is the horizontal bar, and the vertical plane, which is the eternal, coming into the experiential, and the moment of now being represented by the vertical. In the place where those two meet, which could be called the absolute moment of now in the incarnation, you have that choice. The choice being, will I be the hero? What is the hero? Willingly accepting that moment, regardless of what happens there. Willingly accepting, you say, well, the cross. Willingly accepting, in essence, a shameful death that was reserved for those who were the lowest of the low, the most pariah of the pariah in that particular society. The most shameful public execution that you could ever have, and going to that willingly, as Augustine said, as a bridegroom goes to his bride. That's generally an enthusiastic meeting. And that's where the aspect of the hero comes in.
The hero is also doing it to save the other. In other words, the bridegroom is doing this to save the bride. And you can see that easily.
Yeah, well, I think you need to clarify that in the sense that the willingness is without thought of one's own, as people do even now, and you can see it when we were in the cancer wards in Memorial Sloan Kettering. Even now, you see willing sacrifice of one's life for another, willing, eager sacrifice to save another, and you see that when you, in the mythos of Christianity, you see that on the cross, and maybe it mystifies people who haven't gone into it that it's a triumphant sacrifice.
Well, I'd like to bring up that usually it's portrayed as Christ suffering on the cross for all of us. And he's burdened down with all our sin. And it's all, the emphasis is always on suffering. Where that is the temporal part, as opposed to focusing on the eternal part, which is the willingness to participate in this experience and hold to the eternal. Understand that this is not the end, but the suffering will end. That's what I always found fascinating. It's like, why are we concentrating only on the suffering as opposed to the heart and the mindset of God, who loves unconditionally? I think it scares people. I think the word suffering is the one that scares everyone.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and again, to relate it a little bit back to some of the things we talked about with Tolle, that moment of now, the center of the cross, if you will, is an eternal moment, and in that moment, the acceptance of that moment, the acceptance of suffering, in essence, also defeats the suffering, because the true nature of suffering is that you have to reject it in order to experience it. You have to say, accepting the suffering is rejecting it. Is saying, I don't want it. It's something I fear. It's something I detest. It's something I reject, and therefore it comes. But in the acceptance of that moment, in putting it into the eternal, because the moment of now has no time.
Okay, so let me just clarify. What you're basically saying, whatever you resist persists.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it, yeah.
Okay. So, what the cross represents, as I personally see it, is the descent of the eternal into the plane of existence, which forms now. That's my interpretation of what the cross is. And to understand that now happens again and again and again.
As you said a couple shows back, that in essence it creates time. The incarnation of the eternal into the temporal is what creates time, or into the experiential is what creates time. But in holding to the eternal, you in some ways defeat it, because you accept each moment as an eternal moment. Yes, there's the next moment right after it, but you accept each one as the eternal moment. And that's what's beautiful about that symbol, because if you look at that symbol, it's the plane of existence transected.
You don't defeat it. You actually release your soul from being locked in the temporal moment of suffering.
Yes.
Okay. You are releasing your soul from seeing all the sorrows that are around you, and the experiences, the horrible experiences, and you go eternal, concentrating on that eternal. Once that happens, everything shifts, because you live in a place that is broader than the field that you are operating in. It's broader than the experience you are having. You are more than the experience, so you're concentrating on the more part instead of the experience part.
And you've also released yourself from the bounds of time. And this is why, in Christian teachings, they say Christ died for all our sins, future and past.
Yes.
And you say, well, that's a great mystery. It's not. It is a great mystery, but the kernel of the mystery is that future and past don't exist in the eternal moment. There is no future. There is no past. So that one singular, the realization of the singular moment of now, in essence, it passes beyond the bounds of the temporal, and puts you in, as you said, in the perspective of the eternal. And therefore, yes, you can, past and future have no reference in that case. They're at this plane, but you're above it. You're beyond it. You encompass it.
Right. It is a part of your consciousness that can take in the broader circumstances, and is able to walk through the pain and the suffering.
Exactly right. And now we've been talking, of incarnate eternal beings, but each one of us here, and you can see it in people like Christopher and like people who are going through great suffering. You reach a point where you realize that the suffering is meaningless. You go beyond into an existence which the suffering, it doesn't matter anymore. You realize that this particular moment is all that matters. And you get in that realization is a great revelation. You understand that the temporal has no hold upon you unless you will it. Unless you will it. And therefore the will, or the choice to accept the moment of now, in essence, puts you beyond it. Puts you outside of it. The kids in that ward, in various times, maybe it took one longer or one less, or But they would get to that point, and we can all of us here can get to that point where we understand that the temporal, that suffering is not who you are. It doesn't define you. Your disease doesn't define you. Your circumstances don't define you. You're beyond that. But it's a breakthrough. And when it happens, and once you've broken through, you almost can't go back.
No, you can't go back.
Yeah.
But how do I explain this? There is a point in one's soul when you realize that I choose the experience I wish to have. And it's not dwelling on how awful I feel. I want to go and play this new video game. Or I want to go and have fun with my friend over here. Or I want to watch this other show that I find interesting, et cetera, et cetera. It's understanding it's in the choice that you become heroic or you become self-pitying. Maybe it's a good word. Poor me. Look what I have to go through. Honestly, the kids never did that. They never did that. It's hard for people to understand, I know, because that's all adults do, or me. But the kids were in that moment saying, I'm not wasting the life I have right now on pity or self-pity. You would see them have great compassion for the other children that are also going through hard treatments. They would do whatever they could, even if it's just listening to them. But they chose the moment they were in and to live it fully, whatever that demanded. This is life. I will live until I don't.
And I would say that what Campbell is talking about here and what we've been kind of talking about here, all of these things are aspects of this heroic sacrifice. In one way, you become your own hero. In coming to this realization and coming to the point where you understand that the being that rescues you from the temporal suffering of this plane is you. You in your greater aspect. You in your aspect of spirit.
It is your spirit. And it is that divine spark within you that knows the eternal, that is trying to communicate to you that life is eternal and not temporal. That's one of the main acknowledgments. Life is eternal, not temporal.
But very difficult in some ways. It can be challenging to get there. But through, and Campbell talked about this a little bit, but really totally talks about it a lot more, and the Buddhists do as well. Sometimes through suffering, you reach an end of it. You understand that suffering doesn't define you. Sometimes you can get there in a more easy path, and all these various modalities are pathways: the Christian pathway, the Buddhist pathway, the Hindu pathway, or many, many, many different pathways to try to get you to this point. They all have a commonality because they all understand that here is the temporal plane of existence. This place is a place of trial, some place that we've entered into on our hero's journey, and which will result at the base at an existential trial. A point of all is lost. The journey back up. This kind of, Campbell has it as a circle, but the journey back up from that place is to realize that you are the hero of your own story, and you are also reconnecting yourself back up to source through the moment of now. And you see each one of these kids and all those who come to this realization, once you break through, it's almost inexorable. You now understand a greater world. You understand something which is part of you, always was part of you, but it was veiled.
Right. Right. Oh.
Oh, and let's put the veil back down for a second, go back to the studio, and on the other side we'll talk more about the hero's journey, but we'll take a little break.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side, as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is Book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds, before the town comes crashing down around them. A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some moonstones and murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Margaret and Michael Lyons.
Thank you, Z-Man. Yes, we are back.
Your heroic hosts. Actually, just Margaret. She's the hero.
No.
Well, we are talking tonight, though, about the fact that we had a show where we talked about being the hero of your own life, and that's something we can bring into this, but it's really talking about the fact that, and we should go back to what we began with. We kind of went around a little bit, that the act of sacrifice, which we see depicted in Price, for argument's sake, and others, people you may know in your own life, the act of sacrifice is in and of itself often confused with sort of a self-effacing, or a somebody who is in essence sacrificing themselves in a
Obvious manner.
Well, it's often seen as someone who is noble. It's sort of a noble sacrifice. You're and if you are making the noble sacrifice, if you will, it's almost as though you're getting the old whited sepulcher. You're getting the reward from this sort of acclamation of oh, look how noble you are, and you're so much better than everybody else.
You're looking for an audience.
You're looking for an audience, but in truth, sacrifice, which is done. Let's talk about people who go to let's say to fight in a battle, to fight a war, and they know. You could give the example of the soldiers who were on the barges who were landing at Normandy on D-Day. Every one of those people in that landing craft understood that they were the first, that they were likely going to die. But what held them in there was not the fact that they were so brave or so noble. What held them in there was their commitment to say, my life is in essence forfeit, or in essence less. I'm willingly putting it on the table, on into this bargain, willingly, with full knowledge that I may lose it, because I'm giving that life as a as a triumphant act for the other, for that which I value even more than myself. This is a heroic act. It's not a noble act. It's because it's being done in full knowledge, full awareness of the suffering, of the potential for death, and it's done in triumph. You, even in defeat, you are victorious. And we saw that with Christopher, with some of these other kids in the Sloan Kettering. Once you've done this heroic sacrifice, you've put it all out on the line, you've lived every moment of your life regardless of the suffering, death is not a defeat. It's just an end. You've already won.
Mm-hmm. Death doesn't become the goal.
Right.
And it's not even an issue.
No. And the triumph is in deciding to live, in putting one's life, despite everyone telling you, you're going to lose it, you're going to die, you're going to suffer, there's no way you win. You go, I know. I understand that. We're going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. And to do that act with every decision, because it's a decision that you make moment to moment, is an act that allows your spirit to express itself in that moment, because in your spirit lies the courage to take that step and hold to that decision and follow through. If your spirit's not in it, you will not do it.
Yeah, I think that the triumph of everyone's particular life in accepting the moment of now and whatever it brings is where you win, if you will. You said it before. The 4-year-old very, very bluntly said, I like to win, and I always want to win. Or what she said, I miss
want to win all the time.
I want to win all the time. And you say, well, honey, you can't do it. You can win. Win is the wrong word. You can triumph every moment of now in your life. But it requires one thing. It requires, two things. But it requires to accept the moment of now as though you had chosen it, and to bear whatever suffering it is willingly and gladly, whatever the moment brings. But if you see to yourself that this is a moment where no matter what I do, it's going to be suffering, it's going to be pain, you accept it and triumph in that moment. It doesn't matter what happens afterwards. It doesn't matter what the next moment is. You've triumphed in this moment heroically. And you've won, not in the sense that the world would say you've won, but in the sense that your eternal has triumphed over the temporal, and you know it. There's a difference between it will always triumph over the temporal because the eternal is greater than the temporal, but you know it. You have the awareness, the consciousness. You are aware of your triumph over the now, over the temporal, rather.
What it brings to mind is the quote by Jesus that says, in this world you will have suffering, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And that is a confusing statement if you have nothing to go on. It's like, what does that mean? And I've heard it interpreted in so many different ways. But what we were just speaking of, where the triumphant outlook, choice, person, consciousness is staying in that eternal perspective no matter what. And Jesus personifies that. It allows us to see that it is possible to hold that perspective, because frankly, most of us would say, there's just no way.
You often have heard, Margaret, the saying, unite your sufferings with the cross, and it sounds very noble, and it sounds like you're being very self-effacing. But if you really understand it at a deep level, at a true spirit level, what it's really saying is that this moment, which contains sufferings, and that's every moment of your life, greater or lesser, or almost nothing, or almost incredibly, but just say every moment of your life, you remain in the eternal, you remain in the triumphant. You can unite any moment with the eternal. When it says unite your sufferings with the cross, unite it with the eternal, the vertical crossbar, the vertical line is the moment of now, connecting this lower plane with the spirit. You unite it with that, and it's not like it's not happening, but you triumph beyond it because you understand that this moment of now, accepted for whatever it is, takes it from a place of suffering to a place of just now. And you no longer are bound by it, by the time, by the circumstance, by I like this, I don't like that. I, the little I is gone. The greater I triumphs. So that's what that means. There's another wonderful saying in the New Testament where I think the apostles are being brought up to trial, and they say, don't prepare your defense. I'll give you the words. What does that mean? It's like, you'll give me the words. In the moment of now, and you had this happen to you many times, you'll be confronted with a question which you have no idea how to answer. We wrote about it in Christopher's book. You have in that moment of now the ability to open up to eternal, to spirit, and the words that you need, whatever it is, will come in. And people say, oh, you're channeling this. Maybe. What you're really getting is you're connecting your temporal little self who's in a conundrum and trying to answer a hard question and has no idea how to do so with the eternal being, which you actually are, which can draw from basically limitless resources and provide the answer which is required in that moment of now. You go beyond this little boundary box which the ego wants to keep you in. You don't know how to answer that. You'll never know how to answer that. You're right up. Accepting the moment of now, understanding that this is a question I don't know how to answer, and saying, give me the words. This is a defense. I can't defend myself against these accusations. Give me the words. Well, here they are. Who gave them to you? You did, from your actual spirit self, the being that you are, which is connected to Source. So you can unite your sufferings with Christ's. Well, you unite them with the being which is eternal, and understand that that's what makes them less than you, less than your identity. You are not them. You are not your sufferings. You're not the moment of all these things telling you what you are. You are a being, an eternal being, who triumphs over that.
Also, it's understanding that every human being has this experience. You're not alone in your suffering. Every human being has a degree of suffering that they experience down here.
Isn't that always what people try to tell you? They try to make your suffering unique, that no one else is suffering but you. It's one of the things which adds to suffering. Look at everyone else. Everyone else's life is wonderful, and here I am stuck in a cancer ward. No. But that's the lie.
Exactly. the face that people want to put out there is that they're super fine and their life is perfect. Again.
It's funny because it's so true.
Mm-hmm. And this is not the land of perfection, and I never believe anything like that. It's like, oh, is that so? So you basically allow, it's like, okay, you're spinning over there, that's fine. You'll eventually come to the truth of it because you get tired of keeping that face up. And the reality of who you are hits you. And do you have the ability to come to the point of consciousness that is far greater than the piece of you that's telling you the story? Because when you look back on all these sufferings, there's a story involved here. There's always a story involved. And no matter what it is, how great the suffering, like the children on the cancer wards, or how little the suffering, I want the pink one, and I can't get that. I'm sad. I'm angry. To understand that these are stories that you are actually telling yourself. And what a glorious thing it would be to be able to teach an individual how to manage your stories so that they don't run your life. I'd say most people have these little stories, little vignettes that they're constantly telling themselves, and they make their decision according to these little stories that they're telling themselves, as opposed to embracing the fact that you are an heroic being down here and living a life down here is nothing but heroic.
And it's willingly down here. The part of the hero's journey is the hero enters into the dark world willingly. Willingly. And, sometimes not with every piece of information, but understanding that this will be a trial. So, to relate it back to us, to we who are here now, it sounds like sort of a condemnation, but you chose to come here. You did. You may not believe it at this exact moment of now, but in truth, if you say that to somebody and you say it directly to their heart, it echoes because it's the truth. It's a true thing. You chose to come here without knowing exactly what would go and how it would go and whether it would be this or whether it would be that. Because if you knew it all, you'd say, oh, well, that's going to be fine. I'll go do that. It'll be fine. No, you come here looking for experience and understanding that you will not know what will happen next. And what the experience you're truly trying to do to hone in yourself is to accept the unknown, to accept experience and relate it back, unite it back to spirit, to the eternal, make it part of your eternity bank. We've talked about that in the past. And in that way, triumph, willingly coming here and triumphing through your own acceptance of this place and the unknown, the unknowable consequences of this mess down here, and uniting it back to the eternal is it. That's the whole enchilada. It's hard to take that all in and practice it, but that's it. And then in doing that, you triumph. In doing that, you are the hero. And in becoming aware of the fact that you're the hero, you win in some ways. If you really want to win, you really want to triumph, you have to become aware that what is happening here is not you. What is happening here is just what's happening here, and you triumph over it by uniting it back to the fact that you are an eternal being, momentarily, temporarily, down here, willingly, your own volition. You came here to learn something. A lot of things, maybe.
Yes. When Campbell had been discussing this, he was basically calling it release. It's a mythology of release, and it's release from the temporal. Step into the eternal. Now, we always say these, temporal, eternal, da-da-da. And people are looking at it like, well, what does that mean? Because we really don't, as human beings down here, don't understand the temporal, but we get touches of it by the inspiration that comes when your mind is integrating with the spirit.
You meant the eternal, but okay. You said we don't understand the temporal, but I think you meant we don't understand the eternal.
Eternal, yeah. Right. In the temporal form, we don't understand the eternal. But what I had always thought was fascinating was the Tibetan monks. There was one incident where a couple of the Tibetan monks were. One of them had gone into the hospital, and they were quite cheerful about the whole thing. What they had, he was going through like all types. His body was showing all kinds of problems, diseases or kidney failure, and they would just sit happily there, said it's okay, and continue being in this state of meditation, if you want to call it that. It's an internal state. But what astonished the doctors was they would come back later and all the symptoms were gone, and then a whole set of other symptoms were coming in. And they would monitor him and they would try to figure out what was going on, and they'd come back and those symptoms were gone. But this other disease would take a step in, and the little monks were just smiling at them, going, it'll be all right. And what I understood, the teaching that was shown to me, was that they were doing a certain form of, I can say meditation, but what they were doing was they were taking in the sorrows and the diseases that were around them, and transforming them and then releasing them. So they were no longer in the field of operation that they're in. This is an exercise that they do. And it's understanding that they themselves understand that they are interconnected with this world and the people. And suffering is not for an individual only. But you can influence all those around you. And what were they doing? Accepting the situation, observing it, being in their divine aspect, eternal part, giving it all over, breathing light out, transforming it. And then they left the hospital.
Right, we're done here for now.
We're done here.
But isn't there one where they pray for all the sufferings of the world? They're bringing light to, it was another. It's probably we don't have time to go into it. But that's we mentioned this earlier in the past half hour. In your eternal aspect, when we talked about Christ dying for all of our sins, for past and future, in your eternal aspect, you don't and are not limited by space and by time, but that's all here.
And by
time is
body.
Here. Physical body is here. the temporal. That's the temporal, the space, the field of space and time and mass and all those great, wonderful things. You're beyond that. And I think we're beyond the temporal right now. So we've reached the end of the show. I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.